being pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Things, very, very important thing. It's so essential to our spiritual purification to be pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you're pleased with Allah, Allah will be pleased with you. Radiallahu anhum wa radu an. He was pleased with them, radiallahu anhum wa radu an, and they were pleased with him. So it's not just for Allah to be pleased with us, we have to be pleased with Him. Now, to be pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means, obviously we must be pleased with whatever He decrees. If we are arguing with Him or angry with Him regarding what He decreed, then that's almost a type of kufr, because kufr means ingratitude. Arguing with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just, it could be a lot of things we might not think about. Yeah? If someone is more wealthy than you, and you feel hasad, malicious envy, in other words, you wish for them to be stripped of that blessing, that means you are arguing against the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If someone is more better looking than you, and you have hasad towards that, and you wish that they were stripped of that blessing, that means you are arguing with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If someone has more children than you know, you feel hasad, you're angry, you're arguing with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you see how vital it is to submit, to be pleased, not just to submit, but to be pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to be pleased with the decree, because Allah is the one who divided these things. Who has how many children, who has wealth, who doesn't have wealth, who has got beauty, who doesn't have beauty. All of these things are decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even though we may not understand the wisdom always of the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know there's a wisdom. So that's why it's very important to use this formula, which is from the Sunnah, if you can, every day after every prayer. وَرَضِيتُ بِاللَّهِ رَبًّا وَبِالْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا وَمُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ نَبِيًّا. And this is a Sunnah dua, specifically to be done after adhan. But nowadays, so often people, we don't even hear adhan because we're not in a Muslim country. Then make a habit of doing this dua sometime either after Fajr and Maghrib or something like that. Make it a habit every day, because it's supposed to be done every day, 5 times a day after adhan. رَضِيتُ بِاللَّهِ رَبًّا وَبِالْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا وَبِمُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ نَبِيًّا. I am pleased with Allah as my Lord. I am pleased with Allah. It reminds us all the time, no matter whatever Allah has decreed or whatever situation that we're going through, we're not complaining. We're not complaining. We're saying, oh Allah, we're pleased with you. Whatever you decreed, we submit to that, and there's a wisdom in whatever you've done. It's very important, very powerful, very small, but very powerful. Prophet ﷺ taught us these things. They're so, they seem so small, but they're so powerful. This is why, of course, always the best things to do are the sunnah things, the sunnah du'as, before you go to doing du'a from X person or Y person, of course go to the sunnah first. Go to the Quran, and the Quran also teaches us du'as, and then go to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because it's very difficult for us to give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala His rights of adab. When we formulate our own dua, it's quite difficult for us to give the correct adab and the correct what is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of our deficiencies. Of course we should make our own dua. That's very much encouraged by the Prophet ﷺ, to make your own dua as much as possible as well, because it builds up your personal connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So of course do that, but always memorize some du'as from the Quran or the Hadith, because they are the most perfect ways of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the full adab and the full rights that are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So try to, if you don't do that, try to bring this into your daily practice. Raditu billahi rabban wa bil Islami deena wa Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam nabiyya. I'm pleased with Allah as my Lord, and with Islam as my deen, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as my Prophet. Someone told me, I heard from some brother that when he was in Turkey, I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently so, perhaps possibly true. So the Turkish people in Turkey are strong followers of the Hanafi madhab. You know, you have the four madhabs: Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki and Hanbali in Sunni Islam. The Hanafi madhab being the largest madhab historically, and even present day as well. The Ottomans were strong adherents of the Hanafi madhab. So someone was telling me, after the adhan they say Raditu billahi rabba wa bil Islami deenan wa Muhammadin nabiyya sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa bil Abu Hanifa imaman. And we are pleased with Abu Hanifa as our imam. They add that fourth thing there. But I'm not saying you have to do that, but just do the first three at least. So that's the importance of this whole topic about being pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very important. So he says he's talking about remember he was bringing even rational benefits of this, let alone, what are the spiritual benefits, but even rationally he was saying, look at your state of mind. If you're always in opposition to the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll always be anxious and all these things. Wouldn't it be much better just to be more relaxed and more at peace with whatever is happening? And they said, how about the benefit you would get in the next world? In the next world, فَثَوَابُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَرِضْوَانُهُ. If we just were pleased and submitted to the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the benefit in this world would be in a relaxed state of mind, and would be in a state of tranquility and peace, because we're not anxious or depressed or fighting against whatever is happening around us. And secondly, the second benefit, in the next world we will get a huge amount of reward for having this shukr and this submission to the will of Allah and the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لقوله تعالى رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وفي السخط من الهم والحزن والضجر في الحال. What about the opposite? If someone is not pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so now things are happening, he's not happy, he's not pleased to submit to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's going to be in this world, he's going to be in a state of discomfort, anxiety, depression, uneasiness all the time. He's not going to be in a state of tu'manina and sakina, a state of tranquility and peace. وَالْوَزْرُ وَالْعَقُوبَ فِي الْآخِرِ بِلَا فَائِدَةٍ. And in the next world he will be in a state of sinfulness and even punished if he was disrespectful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for no gain to him. Still the same thing that was destined will happen. Still the same thing that Allah decreed will happen, so it's of no benefit to him to be in that state. إذ القضاء نافذ فلا ينصرف بهمك وسخطك. Whatever has been decreed will happen. It doesn't matter if you're anxious about it or angry about it or distressed about it. it will still happen. You know, the time we live in is a time of great tribulations, huge tribulations. So these type of teachings are more relevant to us today than ever before. You know? We see the huge amount of tribulations that people are going through in different parts of the world. You know, it's first of all, obviously, we should be in a state of gratitude for being in a state of afiyah, which we are in a state of security and peace and safety, like we have our food, clothing, shelter, our families are secure. These type of things are such a great blessing. We should be in constant blessing for that, thankfulness, gratefulness for that. You know, none of us living in this country should ever have any cause of complaint in that respect. So before we start complaining, you know, oh Allah, I really need 2 cars. This is just intolerable for me to have just 1 car. You know, for my family, it's just too difficult. Before we start complaining about things like that, let's reflect upon what a state of blessing we're in compared to many, many Muslims around the world. Look at the people I don't need to mention, people know what's happening in so many Muslim countries around the world. Yeah, people literally, they're not safe in their own houses, they're losing their kids, are losing their parents are losing their children, just as a matter of daily occurrences. So we have to keep these things in mind as well, which will make us more show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what we have. كما قيل ما قد قضي يا نفس فاصطبري له ولك الأمان من الذي لم يقدر وتيقني أن المقدر كائن حتما عليك صبرت أم لم تصبري. Anyone have the English of that poem? 2 lines of poetry there.
Well, how does it start again?
ما قد قضي يا نفس فاصطبري له.
What is decreed, O self, endure it with patience, and may you be safe from that which is not foreordained. You must realize that what is predestined will come about for certain, regardless of whether or not you practice patience.
والعاقل لا يختار الحمة بلا فائدة مع الوزر والعقوبة على راحة القلب وثواب الجنة. So he's saying, look, from just a purely rational point of view, anyone who's an intelligent person or a reasoning person, why would they want to be in a state of anxiety and all of this and have punishment in the hereafter instead of with no benefit? The thing decreed will still happen anyway. So why would you do that rather than just be in a state of tranquility with whatever Allah has decreed and have all of the reward in Jannah as well? So these tests will come to us, we will have these tests. There's no doubt about it. لَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we will definitely test you. We will definitely test you. لَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ, with fear, with hunger, وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and loss of self, wealth and fruits, or profits. So these are the sort of things that we will be tested. بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ. It says a portion of fear, not fear, but a portion, shay, just something. Because if we had full on fear, we wouldn't be able to tolerate. We would die. You know, people can die of fear, severe, intense fear, if it was 100%. So there's shay'in min al-khawf. You know, you have some taste of fear to test us. شيء من الخوف والجوع, hunger, ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات, losing of wealth and profits, and anfus could be your own selves, meaning illnesses, diseases, or Allah alim, you could also be tested in other tribulations to your children, for example, or your parents who are like yourselves, because they come from you. These are other ways we could have trials and tribulations. Look at the son of Nuh alayhi salam, who was drowned amongst the disbelievers. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and protect our children. But these are the realities of how Allah might test us. والأصل الثاني ما في السخط من عظم الخطر من عظم الخطر والضرر والكفر والنفاق إلا أن يتداركه الله. So it says the second principle, or the second principle here, is that if we're not pleased, if we're angry with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the huge danger that we put ourselves in by being in this state of mind. Because how we are with Allah, Allah deals with us. It's a very important principle that people should understand. How we deal with Allah, He deals with us. Kama tadinu tudan. How you behave, that's how you are dealt with. Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. People who are merciful to others, Allah is merciful to them. And people who are merciful to others, Allah is merciful to them. Man satara mu'mina satarahu Allah. The one who protects a Muslim or a believer, or covers up their faults, Allah will cover up his faults. You see what I mean? So how we behave with people is how Allah will deal with us. If we're always harsh and unforgiving, and even more than that, cruel to people, that's how we will be dealt with as a consequence, as a punishment, as a justice. And so part of that also is how is our opinion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. If we have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we believe that He always does good. No matter what is happening, even if it's bitter, even if it's difficult for me, I believe that Allah always does good, and there's a wisdom behind this. Then He will deal with us in a good way. He will make things better for us. He will make things better for us. Look at the prophets, how much testing they had, how much difficulty they had. Do you think they were in a bad state though inside? No. Throughout those tribulations, they were still in a good state. They were in a state of tranquility with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us if we have a good opinion of Him. He'll strengthen us, He'll make our iman so strong that these tribulations won't affect us. Because we will be witnessing them as acts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, that's the thing, Being angry, if you're angry with Allah, if you don't have a good opinion of Allah, then we'll be dealt with in the same. So, for example, if we believe Allah is very cruel and He will then punish us more as well as what we deserve for our actions and our opinion of Him. He will deal with us in a strict way. If we believe He's just and He does good and He's kind, then He will deal with us in that way. And how we deal with people is how Allah will deal with us. So if we are merciful towards our Muslim brothers and sisters, we cover their faults up, we don't expose their faults, then Allah will be merciful towards us, He will forgive us. Many stories of this are told in the Sunnah. For example, when Sayyidina Abu Bakr, one man slandered his daughter, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, slandered her. It's a huge, huge thing for someone to say something about your daughter, especially in those days when honor, family honor and these things were very, very important. This person was related to Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he was a Muslim, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr used to give him a certain amount of money because he was a poor Muslim. This guy. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr actually used to give him money every month to help support him. But this person then slandered his daughter. When Sayyidina Abu Bakr found out that she was innocent, because the Quran revealed she was innocent, then he said, I will never give this person money again. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? That the Quran was actually revealed, not naming Abu Bakr directly, but it was directed towards him, that saying in just the meaning of it, that let believers forgive, because do they not love that Allah will forgive them? So when hearing those ayahs, then Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, I forgive him, and he started giving the money again. Despite such a thing, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us, you see. He was teaching those Sahaba forgiveness. If we, this is the thing, we fall into this type of double standards with ourselves. We're convinced that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive us everything, no matter what we do. It's the nature of a human being, but our delusion from shaitan deludes us. Everyone thinks they're something special, everyone thinks they're good, everyone thinks they'll be forgiven everything they do. But when someone does wrong to us, we don't want to forgive them. You see what I mean? What sort of thing is this? Why are we so sure that Allah will forgive us everything? All of these things we are doing in rebelliousness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then someone does us something, small thing wrong, but we don't want to, we keep the grudge. I'm going to get that person back somehow. That person has to pay for that, what they done. I want to get them back. I want to make them pay. I'm going to, you're going to do something. That's not forgiving. Yet at the same time we're sitting there thinking, whatever we do, of course Allah will forgive us everything. It doesn't work like that. And this is what that incident was teaching. A great Sahabi like Sayyidina Abu Bakr, look how big was his test. This was someone who slandered his own daughter. How many of us will be able to forgive something like that? But immediately he forgave, because that was what the Sahaba were like when the Quran came. They were immediate in their implementation of Quran. There was the one thing they used to say about Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. Sayyidina Umar, as you all know, he was from the strong side of human nature. A person who was from the strong side, the slightly what they call shadid. The only thing that could stop him when he was angry or when he was being in that state was Quran. If he heard if you told him an ayah of Quran, immediately he would completely stop. That's it, So that was there, obviously. That teaches us to be forgiving. If we're forgiving, then Allah will be forgiving towards us. If you find out a Muslim brother or sister is doing something wrong, don't just quickly rush off and tell everyone. Or tell your wife, oh, you won't believe, or tell your husband, oh, you won't believe so-and-so is doing this or that. Or tell your other friends, other Muslim friends, oh, can you believe so-and-so does this or that. Don't do that. This is shahwatul kalam. This is a shahwa. This is a desire that you have to fight. It's a shahwa. It's actually a pleasure. Because it's pleasurable to backbite people. and slander people. Why? Because deep down what's actually happening is you're boosting your own ego. This is what we have to realize. Every time we put someone down or mention someone's mistakes or mention someone doing something wrong, really what we're doing is putting ourselves up, because you're saying I'm better than that person. Understand? That's why it's pleasurable to the self. That's why it's pleasurable to the ego, because it's actually takabbur. This is why we said, many times, all diseases can go back to this thing of kibr and takabbur, of arrogance. All diseases go back to that. Everything, all bad things can be drawn back to that root, because you're boosting your own ego by talking down about other people. And that's why it's pleasurable. That's why it's called shahwatul kalam, shahwatul lisan, one of the things that the tongue wants to do. So we have to suppress these desires. We have to cover the fault of that Muslim. So don't tell anyone about it. Don't tell anyone. And then think to yourself, why have I got such a strong urge to tell people about this? Because you'll find that you cannot stop yourself. You have to tell your friend or your wife or your husband or someone. Why do you have to? How does it benefit? How does it concern you? من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. From the good Islam, the true Islam of someone is to leave things which don't concern them. من ستر مسلما or مؤمنا ستره الله يوم القيامة. Whoever covers the faults of a Muslim, Allah will cover his faults on the Day of Judgment. Do you want on Yawm al-Qiyamah for your faults to be exposed in front of other people? So each time we do that, we cover up the fault of that Muslim. Just think about the reward you're going to get for that. Just think about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah will cover your faults. The more sacrifice we make for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more in reality we're gaining for Yawm al-Qiyamah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to cover the faults of the Muslim brothers and sisters. One related point, some people think that the husband and wife should share everything, and they think that somehow this doesn't come under the umbrella of covering the fault of a Muslim. So if you find out something, you can tell your own husband or wife, but you shouldn't tell other people. Now, realistically speaking, unless your wife is like Sayyidah Khadija or someone like that, how likely is it that thing will remain unexposed if you tell your wife? Secondly, I don't know where people have got this idea. Allah Alim, if I'm wrong, someone please come and tell me where's the hadith or where's the evidence for this, that you can expose everything to your own wife. It doesn't come under the thing about satara musliman, about covering the faults of a Muslim, or it doesn't come under backbiting. If that is the case, please come and tell me, because I've even seen some people who are supposed to be shayukh doing this as well. They're supposed to be sheikhs, but for whatever reason they feel with their wives or spouse they can just, and then their wives are telling everyone. I'm hearing things because this so and so Sheikh's wife has told so many other sisters. So how is that? I mean, I don't get that. I don't understand why people are following that opinion or Allah. If someone tells you something in confidence, then it doesn't mean that you have to tell your spouse.
Sometimes, if I can ask, is that another argument about it is that sometimes things which you hear, it's like a kind of counselling, isn't it? I mean, why do they tell their wives? Because they have difficulty dealing with the psychological impact upon themselves of hearing things, and that's why they.
No, in that case, then they can anonymise it. You know, you don't have to mention people by name. So if it's anonymised, then that's fine. Yeah.
But then, if it's your wife, the chances are that thing will not be anonymous. They'll work out who the things are that you're talking about.
Then I think you should desist. I personally, I don't see why it wouldn't come under backbiting and all of that.
I think it's a challenging. It takes a lot of work. You see, like you were saying, the shahwa of ghiba and namima, these types of things. It's very, very tough on the, and we're doing, in this culture we talk about everything and everyone all the time. It's the nature of where we are. That doesn't make it right. It's a huge kabira, but it takes work to discipline yourself. And like you were saying, you hear something, you can't believe it. It's like you're so incredulous, sort of. I can't believe that, and you need validation, almost. And you seek out your spouse, and generally that might be in the evening after you loosened up, had some food, you're more relaxed, etc., and then you start talking about these things because the barriers come down.
I think the only question is that obviously one is the technical, is it what is the actual specific prohibition about it? Because if obviously backbiting is prohibited, and I can't see any reason why that should not include your wife. That's one thing. But another thing is the question of to what extent can you discuss things with your wife, even if you anonymise them, is that permitted or not? Do you know what I mean? There's like two issues, which is without the intention of backbiting somebody, you feel the need to either draw a lesson from it or give a lesson from it, or or that kind of thing, with the intention of not backbiting. That's another question.
I mean, if the thing is public knowledge, then it wouldn't be backbiting anyway. So a lot of these things might be something your wife already knows about as well, and you know about, then obviously then it wouldn't come into backbiting. So yeah, just there's certain things which are obviously forbidden, which is backbiting, which is this thing about covering the fault of a Muslim. I think is quite important, because these are often things, if you know a Muslim is doing something, then if you're the only one that knows, you shouldn't tell anyone. But if it's something that people know about, then it's not going to come under that prohibition, because people already know about it, if you know what I mean.
I mean, an example would be that somebody does something which you don't think is very good. You're not. It's not clear whether it's good or not. So then you speak to your wife about, or your wife speaks to you saying, "This has happened, and it doesn't seem like it's a very good thing to do. We shouldn't do this type of thing, or should we do this type of thing?" And so, if the conclusion of that was that this is not a good thing to do, then obviously you have revealed whatever that person has done, in order to understand whether.
It sounds like they wouldn't have done it secretive. It's not something they were keeping.
Well, it's not a secret, no, but it was kind of an analysing what has happened to see whether that is the better thing to do or not, and then that may imply on their motive. I suspect this was their motive, and therefore it would be a bad thing to do. So it's a lot of speculation is involved there, but
yeah, I mean the definition of ghiba is if that person was there, they wouldn't like that word to be mentioned. So that's what I always imagine, that they're there. If I can say that, and they would be happy with that.
Yeah.
So there's certain people that I know I can say things. I sort of permit that for me to say it to someone else. So I know they'd be fine with it.
That's good. That's a good way to do it. Definitely. That's probably the best way.
My khila around it.
Just imagine the person in front of you, and how would they be completely satisfied?
Well, then what if you would, whether they liked it or not, you would have said it to them anyway in front of them.
No, it depends if they would like it or not. That's the actual.
But even if somebody doesn't like it, you could say, I'll still tell this person, this is what you're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
So don't do that. But
There's different aspects. Like, for example, if you heard of some person who was, I don't know, going to musical concerts, and you personally feel that's not allowed, and you were discussing that with your wife, I heard these people go to these musical concerts, but surely that's haram, and that's fine, because it's not something they're doing which is they consider a sin, let's say, you know. But if for example you saw a Muslim who's quite a 5 daily prayer person, long beard, and one day you walk in, you saw him sneaking into a nightclub, looking around, he's trying to keep it a secret. That's something you should then hide. That's what Satara Muslim. He's doing a sin. You should not tell anyone, especially your wife, because then it's likely to get out, isn't it? So that's the sort of thing I think.
So I guess my example is not really, if it was a blatant sin, that's not even up for discussion. There's no need to.
No, exactly.
To say. It's those things which, it's more subtle things that you would wonder: is this the right thing to say? Is it not? I mean,
no, it's fine. It's more a case of just looking at. And there are a lot of things. People find. If sometimes they might think, what can we then talk about? There's a lot to talk about. That doesn't involve going into sinful talk as well. Talk about things about the deen, things that you learn in darses or things you've been reading, and discuss things that are useful, for everyone. Really, or otherwise just do dhikr or read Quran or stuff like that. If you sacrifice something for the sake of Allah, Allah will actually replace it something better in this world. Not only in the akhirah, but even in this world. People will tell you that all the time who have done this, Someone who sacrificed, say, television, they found that they were watching too much and it was distracting them and it was maybe even becoming haram for them. So they've given it up. They found it difficult, but then they'll tell you, what I got afterwards was better than what I'd given up. So if we make this sacrifice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we are doing anything, backbiting or things like that, we'll find actually we'll get something better in this world, as well as in the hereafter.
There's only one question about covering. I agree with you. But if somebody is cheating somebody all the time, suppose the husband is cheating a wife, like you said, the example of the nightclub. If you're going to the nightclub every week, and then the suffering of the wife and the children take place. The same way, if a man is going out with other women, and he has got a double role in the society, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that he's very religious man, and I have seen these people, and you are covering up either as a wife or as children that he should not be exposed. After years, if you say something happens, that person is saying that he's mentally ill, I've never done this. So there is a danger also. If it is occasional or, then fine covering. But if somebody is cheating all the time, even in the society, suppose somebody is taking bribery and things like that, he comes to you and says, I will get it done, and you don't expose to that person, he will continue his activity.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain times when you can speak about people. So this is, for example, like you said, if it's to take someone to justice, then of course you're allowed to then break that rule.
I think, as you said, it's better to tell that person straight away, that just in isolation, that this is something which I think is, I may be wrong, but you are doing wrong.
No, exactly, yeah. And that's the key thing, to do it in isolation as well. You must speak to the person alone. Unless it is something he's doing publicly. If it's something he's doing publicly, then you can confront him publicly as well. Although, obviously, use your wisdom. It might be more effective to speak to him alone. But sometimes, if it's something someone's doing publicly, and you feel also it's corrupting the people around, then you can also confront them publicly. More for the sake of the people around rather than the person himself. Because the person himself is very unlikely to be changed if confronted publicly. But yeah, definitely. So this is not talking about those type of cases. This is talking about just the cases where we're just what they call qeel wa qaal, just gossiping, gossiping, chatting, backbiting for no apparent reason, no benefit. sometimes there will be a benefit, or there will be a darura, a necessity why you have to speak to your wife about certain things. Or sometimes, like you mentioned, people who are corrupt. Or say you know a mechanic and he's conned you several times. Then you should tell your wife or even other people, look, I advise you don't go to this mechanic, and if you need to, you can tell them why. But the rule is you have to say the minimum. You have to say the minimum necessary for that darura. So you tell them, look, he's done this, but you don't have to go into other details about, oh, by the way, he also goes to the pub. he's also, takes riba or something like that. Just do the minimum necessary for that thing.
There's 3 or 4, and marriage was the other one. There's 3 or 4 permissible times.
Yeah, there's a few, yeah.
The other point I was just going to say here is so we find from the scholars of the past, the scholars of Tasawwuf particularly, is that they didn't like to habituate their tongue with anything. So even if it was permissible, they wouldn't say it. And they give the example about the Sultan, talking about a corrupt Sultan. Even though there's some permissibility there, they wouldn't do that. Just because it's making themselves, habituating the tongue to saying something that would be classed as, unsightly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the way they train themselves is that when they would do something that was that they would deem as ghiba or namima or kadhib or lying, backbiting, storytelling, they would write it down. Immediately write it down. And then they would make, there's a hadith, if you commit a sin, then you go and make wudu, and then you do 2 nafils, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for that specific sin. Allah will you be forgiven. Sahih hadith. So they would follow that. So Shaykh Alawi is an example of that, and he practiced that for 20 years doing this. And what he found, every time he did so, he'd write it down, and at the end of each day to erase it. So he got this out of his character, completely wiped it out, and he found that even his thoughts would change. He wouldn't be even thinking like that after a while. So these are the lessons that we find from the scholars of the soul. Very useful.
Practical ways to implement some of these things. Okay, so that obviously, the thing about speaking to spouses, obviously, anyway, وتأمل قوله تعالى فلا وربك لا يؤمنون حتى يحكموك فيما شجر بينهم ثم لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ويسلموا تسليما. Imam al-Ghazali brings this ayah of Quran, Surah Nisa 65. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, taking an oath by himself, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ, nay, I swear by your Lord. Your Lord, the kaf there for the Prophet ﷺ. I swear by your Lord, they will never believe, or they will not believe until you judge between them, between whatever disputes arise between them, and then they do not find any haraj, they do not find any difficulty in accepting your verdict, and they submit completely. So this ayah particularly was revealed regarding some people who were actually munafiq in Medina. They were just pretending to be Muslims outwardly, but when it came to certain things where there were disputes, they didn't want to go to the Prophet ﷺ for a judgment. Or if they went to him for a judgment and then he judged, they wanted to go for a second opinion. So this ayah was revealed that this is not permissible. The story actually, they came to Sayyidina Umar for a second opinion. They said, this is what happened, the Prophet ﷺ said this, but we want your opinion. He went inside his house and he came out with a sword, drawn sword. And he was going to chop their heads. Because he didn't see that, you can't do that, if the Prophet ﷺ has given verdict, you don't come to me. You know? So then these ayahs were revealed. That they will not truly believe until they are pleased, or whatever you have decided, whatever verdict you have given. So this is the key thing here. ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ. So Imam al-Ghazali is saying, if this is for the Prophet, what about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Whatever he decrees, we shouldn't have any haraj in ourselves, in our hearts. You know, whatever happens, we should just submit and we'll be pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nafyul Iman. So he says, look at this ayah also. It's negating Iman for those people who have this haraj. It's negating Iman for people who find this haraj inside themselves. وَأَقْسَمَ عَلَى مَنْ سَخِطَ قَضَاءَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم فكيف حال من سخط قضاء الله تعالى. وروينا أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال في حديث قدسي عن رب العالمين من لم يرضى بقضائي ولم يصبر على بلائي ولم يشكر نعمائي فليتخذ إلها سوائي. So we mentioned this hadith Qudsi where the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah says, whoever is not pleased with my decree and is not patient during my tribulations and is not grateful for my blessings, then let him take another God let him take another God. That's a very strong hadith. That whatever bala comes to us, whatever tribulation, is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no doubt about it, from the Quran. ذَلِكَ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ. Talking about the Yahud when their sons were being killed by by Fir'aun. Fir'aun was killing all of the sons of Bani Israel. Imagine that tribulation. What tribulation could be worse than that? All your newborn sons are killed. That's a huge. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? ذَلِكَ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ. That was a test from your Lord, a great test, Azim, a great test from your Lord. But it doesn't say it was from Fir'aun. It was from your Lord. It was a test from your Lord. No doubt about that in the Quran. وَمَا أَصَابَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْتَقَى الْجَمْعَانِ فَبِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Let's talk about the battle of Uhud now. Whatever happened to you on that day when the two armies came together, it was with the permission of Allah. لِيَعْلَمَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, so He may know who are true believers. So there was a wisdom behind it as well. And some of those wisdoms are mentioned in the Quran itself. Why did the Muslims suffer? Why did Sahaba suffer that setback in Uhud? Many of them believed that they wouldn't, and actually they were shocked. They were so certain that they would have victory on that day that they were actually, that was an ibtila for them as well, to understand why this happened. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually gave some of the wisdoms of why. First He said, فَبِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, it was by the permission of Allah. First, to just make you realize, this is something that Allah had decreed. And then some of the wisdoms are given in the ayahs that follow, that He may know who are the true believers. So the Mufassirin, they say, so that it may be manifested to creation, to the Malaika, to all of creation, who are the people of true belief, who was still there with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam when the things got tough. So that's one of the great wisdom of it, because the nature of the human being is that we will dispute with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Qiyamah unless there was proof that the thing happened. You see what I mean? Like if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, He could throw everyone in hellfire right now and people in Jannah without the thing happening, because He knows what was going to happen, isn't it? But the nature of the human being, because he's been given free will, he will say on Yawm al-Qiyamah, oh Allah, if only you had, I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have done that. So this is why we're here, for things to actually manifest. What people will do will manifest here. So that we can't have any excuses on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Like it says in Surah Yasin, that their hands, but still the human being will deny. Even when he's done the thing, on Yawm al-Qiyamah he'll still be denying it. He'll still say, no, Allah, I didn't do it. But his own limbs will then bear witness against him. You did that thing. So this is one of the wisdom, so that the true believers will become manifest. On the day of Uhud, the munafiqun, they left before the battle. They didn't even come out to the battle. The true believers were there with the Prophet ﷺ, even when things get tough. So when things get tough, that's when Iman actually becomes manifest. The age we're living in now is an age where things are going to get tough, or are getting tough, or are tough already. So this is an age where Iman is now becoming manifest. And we'll see those people of weak Iman, or people who are hypocrites, will be becoming manifest. Okay, so that's قيل كأنه يقول هذا لا يرضاني ربا حتى يسخط حين يسخط فليتخذ ربا آخر يرضاه. So as if in this hadith Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this person is not happy with my decree when he's being angry towards whatever is being decreed, so let him take some other God that does please him, that he is pleased with. وهذا غاية الوعيد والتهديد لمن عقل. So remember then that thing, why we should always say رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا ومحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا. Make it a practice every day to say this very short formula but very powerful. And keep conscious of what we say as well. There's no point doing du'as and dhikrs if we're not conscious of what we're saying. Keep an awareness. That's what they call hudur. When you do dhikr, or you do your prayer, or read Quran, or do these du'as, there's no point doing them just as a robot, not thinking even what we're saying. Force yourself to have a conscious awareness of that. Istihdar, we have to force it. After we force, then we train ourselves, then we will do it without having to force ourselves. وَلَقَدْ صَدَقَ بَعْضُ السَّلَفِ إِذْ قِيلَ لَهُ مَا الْعُبُودِيَّةُ وَالرُّبُوبِيَّةُ. One of the Salaf was asked, what is servanthood and what is rububiyyah? How do you translate that? Lordship. فَقَالَ الرَّبُّ يَقْضِي وَالْعَبْدُ يَرْضَى. He said, the Lord decrees and the servant is pleased. فإذا قضى الرب ولم يرضى العبد فما هناك من ربوبية ولا عبودية. So Imam al-Ghazali says, if the Lord decrees and the slave is not pleased, then where is the slave and where is the Lord? فتعمل هذا الأصل وانظر لنفسك لعلك تسلم بعون الله وتوفيقه. Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, he says, think carefully and deeply about these things and look at yourself. Examine yourself. The whole science of tasawwuf is about turning our gaze into ourselves and trying to really understand ourselves and our things which motivate us, things which are controlling us from within. Inshallah, you will be saved by the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His tawfiq. وَأَمَّا الصَّبْرُ فَإِنَّهُ دَوَاءٌ مُرٌّ. Anyone have time on that? Time?
10 to 12.
So it says, coming on to sabr now. So we've been talking about being pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now he's going to go into the discussion onto sabr, which is obviously related, sabr, patience. فَإِنَّهُ دَوَاءٌ مُرٌّ. He says this is a very bitter medicine. وَشِرْبَةٌ كَرِيهَةٌ. It is a unpleasant drink. إِلَّا أَنَّهَا مُبَارَكَةٌ كَرِيمَةٌ تَجْلِبُ كُلَّ مَنْفَعَةٍ. But at the same time it is a very blessed and noble drink that will bring all benefits to you. وَتَدْفَعُ عَنْكَ كُلَّ مَضَرَّةٍ. And it will get rid of all harm. So sabr, in other words, is one of the great principles of this deen. Is one of the great principles of this deen, which inshallah I'm sure has become clear over the last few weeks. I've talked a lot about sabr as well. وَإِذَا كَانَ الدَّوَاءُ بِهَذِهِ الصِّفَةِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. The Surah Al-Asr is considered to be a very comprehensive surah. Within those 3 short ayahs, everything is there for the whole deen. So you believe, you do good works. تَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. We as a community come together upon the truth. We encourage one another to the truth. And we encourage one another to patience. That's the deen. Very comprehensive, of huge meanings of those words. It's interesting there as well, tawasaw, being the reciprocal, not the individualistic term used. Tawasaw you can't do it by yourself. It has to be with someone else. Yeah? You can't do it by yourself. Indicating how this deen is once again more sociocentric than individualistic, which is the dominant culture that we're in, is a very individualistic. Islam's not about that. I've talked about this before. There's a good article I read on this topic by someone who actually can't remember his name. They're saying in Islam the person is defined by their relations. So in this culture, it's like now they're saying it's like a hyper individualistic culture. It's become such an extreme. Where the person is like it's all about you it's you, but as an individual. And we won't realize how this has affected us, but by growing up in this society and culture, it's very much affected us. It's affected all of us, and we have to make actually a conscious effort to now come back to what Islam teaches. It's affected us because it just defines the way you are, because you've grown up within this culture. Everything around you has been teaching you that this is what you're supposed to be like. So it's all about you, me. I am, who am I? I am Ridhwan. That means I have asserted my own, I haven't given anything about what defines me in regard to my relations. Where if you ask someone before, who are you, they would say, I'm Abu Muhammad Ibn Saleem. I'm the father of Muhammad, the son of Saleem. You see, already there's a difference there. Now, I'm no longer saying I'm Ridhwan. I'm a father, and I'm a son, and I'm a husband, and I'm a uncle, and I'm a neighbor, and I'm a nephew, and I'm a grandson. This is who I am. Because that's what the deen also gives us. Then all of these relations have rights upon us. We're not people who are just able to just say, that's it, I am Ridhwan and I don't care about anyone else. We can't do that. The deen doesn't allow that. And also the thing about this deen is it insists upon congregation as well. It insists upon people coming together. It doesn't allow us to be isolated. The very strong obligation of going to the masjid. I say obligation, but I mean Sunnah, nearing the level of obligation. According to some other madhabs, it actually is obligation. Like the Hanbalis actually made it obligatory to go into the congregation to pray your fard. But why such a strong emphasis on coming together? You see what I mean? The community has to come together. The Prophet ﷺ said, even if there's 2 people or 3 people, I can't remember if the hadith said 2 or 3, in a desert, in a badia, they should come together for the prayer. Come together. Because why? He said the shaitan takes the straying sheep, the lone sheep, the straying sheep is taken by shaitan. So the one who wants to isolate himself, he becomes much more vulnerable to shaitan. Much more vulnerable to shaitan. So these are aspects of our deen that we really have to think about again, that we don't often, subtle things we don't realize how this culture has affected us. One point when I really realized how I'd been affected by this, with one of the realizations I had once was when I saw some of my cousins from Pakistan, and these brothers, same age as me, their father was telling them, go and marry so-and-so girl, and they would go and marry the girl, without having seen, or probably they've seen photo, just met her once. There was no option of saying no, really. I mean, they probably could have, but they didn't even think to themselves that they should say no. And to me, I found that bizarre. I just thought, how can, but just so alien to my own way of being. And but then when I read this article by this particular sheikh, that's when it really hit me that this is actually, this is what it's actually, because that person, he sees what a father is, that he's a son of this person, and how much obligation the father has upon him. You see, where we have lost that without realizing in subtle ways. We lose actually the status of the mother and father, and that obligation. And not just mother and father, all of these relations that I talked about. Whereas in other, still some countries, they still have that very much sociocentric type of life, where all of these are so important. All these relations are so important. You probably have noticed it in your own parents. How they are compared to how we are with their relatives, with everyone. They would, if someone is ill, they would go and visit them without even thinking twice, even if they don't like the person. If it's your blood relative, you have to. It's like an obligation. You have to do it. For us, no, I don't like that person. I'm not going to go and see them. So we've become much more individualistic. We've lost that.
I think the real worry is that, coming from the older generation, exactly the same thing. But when you look at your children, they don't even have that sort of affinity between themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not, never mind cousins and the cousins and the cousins, that we have relationships. They don't have that affinity between themselves. And it's
even
only a
amongst
matter of
brothers,
time.
sisters, things like that. Yeah,
between them.
true,
And it's only a matter of time.
I mean, it's very complex because part of it is also a lot to do with the sort of our surroundings as well. Because we've got so much of this entertainment, this electronic gadgets, computers, TVs. So people have less time for other people as well. Like I've talked about in the past, In the past, imagine you had no TV, no computers, none of these things to entertain you. People would go and meet people for entertainment as well. That's why they say entertain the guest, Because you'd just be sitting at home by yourself otherwise. But now people don't, you have that need anymore as well. So there's a lot of things that are contributing, But there's no doubt that this is happening, that people are becoming, in sociologists they call it atomization. You know, people are becoming just isolated individuals now, more and more. But I think Islam is very core. It goes against that trend. With this insistence on jama'ah, on these relations, you know, your rights, your blood relatives have such a huge right on you. You know, we can't cut off those. It's a huge major thing to cut off the blood relations and all these things.
So if this is happening, that means that our generation actually failed to inculcate in the kids that sort of importance of those relationships. So in a certain way, but then what you need to think about now yourself, the next generation, how are they going to stop their next generation not to go into the same way? And how much is happening, what's happening?
Yeah, it's a big
Stop
challenge.
that.
It's a big challenge, yeah.
So
it's a big challenge.
The big challenge, you see, we are, as we said, we are losing the human touch because of the technology. Even shopping, forget about it, shopping all done on the line, you know, you don't go and see them. But it is the way we are thinking, because we are comparing our time or past with them, or we are comparing according to our religion, what the religion is saying. But these people who don't believe in our religion, for them it is good. This is what they think themselves.
It might be, yeah.
So what will happen in the next generation, God knows better. Because even now, you know, these email, all these, I don't like it, you know. I don't like I don't know. But there is an advantage also. Like with the new telephone, you know, you can see the picture. You can see the
yeah, it's true.
and all this technology helps us to understand the God, you know, which we were told when we were a child, you know. One farishta on this side, one farishta, they are communicating, they are doing that. So in that way, it has become much easier to understand what the religion teaches, you know. But on the other side, it has, he says, you know, that.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. I mean, I personally, I feel also these, even non-Muslims, I think they're suffering in this environment as well. This isolation. You know, they talk about that as well. You know, breakdown of families, breakdown of communities. Of course, there are some, especially wealthy people, that are more able to utilize technologies to their advantage and to their enhancement of their life as well. But there's definitely, I mean, there's more and more people living alone now in this society. That's what statistics are showing. You can go online and see national household surveys, things like that. They're showing a massive trend towards what they call single-person households now. You know, in the cities, people living by themselves. Literally, it's quite unusual, really. A very large proportion of people living just completely by themselves.
But as a state now, even these people are realizing how important, though it is not in practice, how important is the marriage, how important is the family life. The elders should be looked after by the family, not by the state. So these things are coming back, you know. How it will be implemented, how that we don't know. But they are realizing the disadvantages of all these things, even as a state. You know.
I don't think they will do much, because personally I think for people who are the powerful people in this society, it's to their advantage to have people isolated. Because when you have people coming together as communities, they can start organizing and they can start raising a voice. Whereas if you've got people isolated, you know, an individual living by himself with a TV, all he knows is what he's getting from the TV, the state is giving him, you know, they're watching the BBC. If he feels wronged, like, you know, why is petrol now £1.50 or something? That's a robbery, you know. What's that individual going to do? He doesn't have a community, he doesn't have a voice. This is what I wrote in one article, that Muslims actually have got a huge capacity here because we have the Jummah, you know. Every week our whole community, literally, I mean, they done estimates, you know, this government sponsored document, research was done, and they looked to estimate the number of Muslims that actually come to Jummah in this country, and they estimated approximately 500,000. And if you think about it, then because they say there's, you know, say there's 2 or 3 million Muslims. If you take out the women and children, you could say probably nearly almost all adult males are coming for Jummah. This is like a unique thing of our community, that we actually have a gathering every Friday. People come and sit and they're actually listening attentively to the person speaking. So in terms of organizing ourselves as a community, that offers a very powerful opportunity. Because that's what the people in power don't really want, is people to actually be organized and formulate a voice. But anyway, yeah, this aspect of the Deen and how did we face that challenge. People have talked about formulating Muslim villages, for example, you know, trying to bring back, so Muslims should move out of cities and go to countryside and have like a community, you know. I don't personally, I really, it doesn't appeal to me, that idea, for some reasons. I think people have done that in the past, not just Muslims, other communities have tried to do that as well. Set up communes or communities, and I think it ends up having a lot of problems, and that can be studied as well, you know, what happened with these communities. I am more in favour of the idea of Muslims having communities within these areas that we are, you know, like around masjids. So around Hounslow Masjid should be the Muslim community, you know. And then we have to work on. So you have the masjid or the musalla, which is like the community where the community comes together. You make sure the Friday Jummah is fulfilling the actual function of Jummah, which is to not only just to teach people and give people a reminder about the Deen, but also to make sure it's addressing the needs of the community in terms of organizing the community. And then you have your Muslim schools, you know, for the children to go to, where they're learning the Deen.
That could be one of the aspects, but I think what I thought that the major thing is actually kids' education.
Yeah.
Because that is where they spend most of their time. That's where they pick up what individualism is, what is me there means. And I think unless that is tackled, you know, at our age, whatever the realization is, it's not going to be any use. Even if you are in together, in a mosque, masjid together. And I see that loads of people in the, and it's good for them as a community and as a discussion topic, and talk to each other and fight with each other and all sorts of things. Yeah? So that's good for them. It's some sort of entertainment for them. But it's not going to do, I don't think it's going to do any real good for the next generation to come through.
What I mean is if the masjid was used properly, you know. So you've got the people coming there, but where's the, you know, the talks, the ta'aleem, the teaching going on? Where's the proper khutbahs that are teaching people? Circles for younger people, getting the youth into the masjids. But there's so many things you can do, like if the masjid, they've got community halls. If you put up table tennis there, put up pool tables there, just to get the youth in, you know, they're not going to come in if you tell them to come to pray. You want them to come to the masjid, then you can talk to them.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many things you can do. So if that community, that the musalla or the masjid should be a community centre, if it was used in the proper way. Yeah. But then, of course, I agree. We have to have schools.
Yeah,
you know, for education of the next generation. So I think we need these three things. We need the masjid or the musalla. It doesn't have to be a masjid, because masjid is actually quite strict. What is a masjid? It has to be something that is purchased freehold, and it has to be, then, you know, it can't be sold as well. So it might be more practical to have musalla. where you can do these things for the community. Then we need education, schools, primary and secondary, and we need also a dawah organizations. So we're taking Islam out to ourselves, to our own community, and to non-Muslims as well. I think these are the three aspects of work that needs to be done in this country. Allah Alam. Should we leave it there, inshallah? Is it past 12 now? Any other comments or ideas, thoughts about that?
There's just one thing I was going to say. There's a very well-known study called the China study, and because you mentioned other cultures, so and in this study, this guy called Robbins, he looked at cultures, cultures in China that the average age was over 100 years old. And I remember telling you about it once. But, he attributed 3 reasons why. Because he looked at their diet, their habits, etc. And the one thing he said, he concluded in this book, where their diet was plant protein, etc. They had a very good diet. Second, they were never in isolation. They had good family ties, very good family ties, generation span, and they had a routine. They're routinized. So these things are,
no one idle, you mean?
Not idle, yeah, exactly. Yeah. They would, work in the land, plough the fields, etc.
I personally think people were happier, without all that technology. I do think that if you think back, if you lived in the time of the Ottomans or the Abbasid, where there was security, because the function of the Muslim government or the state is to provide security for its citizens to be able to practice their deen and to just live their lives as free people and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that's provided and you're a member of that, and you can live your life in a fulfilling way and focus on developing your spiritual aspects and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like Imam Zaid once, one of my teachers, he said, the average normal Muslim is they just want to have a straightforward life, go to work, come home, play with your children, go to a dars or something, go to the masjid and go to sleep, and you're happy and you're fulfilled, But with all of these technologies and everything, but then people are more isolated. There's studies as well. There's definitely show that mental illness, depression, these things are getting more common. So Allah. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. In fact, I think mental problems are becoming very much more common now.
That is because of the isolation. Isolation is one of the
factors, but a lot of other